Because one of the things that I think people do that sets themselves up for disappointment and a sense of failure is that, well, I want to exercise, and they may start doing it for a few days or even a week, and then they drop off, and then they feel like, well, gosh, I didn't make time for it, or it's just not, I'm just not cut out to be this way. And what I've noticed is that by having them to talk about, well, what are your values? Is it important for you to have good health? Is it important for you to be in shape? How important is it for you to be able to sink 5 free throws in a row? Whatever it may be. And if they can get clear about what their values are, regardless of what those values might be, if they can make choices and decisions that are consistent with that, then they're more likely to be satisfied over time, and they'll feel pretty happy with their life. Now, in that discussion, they're talking about, well, my family's important, my job is important, my church is important, whatever it may be. And then they also say, well, it's also important for good health. Then we have to talk about, well, relative to all these things, where is your health and where is being in shape, how important is that relative to these other things? And if it's actually high enough, then we can talk about, well, we do need to make it a priority then. And that you need to let go of some of these other stuff. And that one of the hardest things, probably the first hurdle for people to get over, is that with every choice, there is actually a payoff for it. There's also a loss with every choice that we make. That we get something, but we also give up something. And so helping them understand, you're giving this up, but you're doing it so that you can get this. And then we start talking about what are some other barriers then that stand in the way. If we've gotten to that point, then I find out and give advice about how can they start the exercise.
Okay, and that's very true. What I also find, too, is that when people, if they value, their health enough, or if the doctors told them, well, you have high cholesterol, and you have a health history of heart disease in your family, and things of that nature, your blood pressure's high, diabetes runs in your family, that begins to motivate the person, I found, a little bit more, especially when the doctor tells them, these numbers are getting at risk, or they're a problem. And so then the person begins to take those steps. But the value has to be high, just like you were saying, in order for that person to put it as a top priority. I have some clients, and I can almost tell when we first talk from the first discussion, is that, okay, let's begin. Let's set up the time to do it. When do you want to meet? And, then here it goes. The person that hasn't made that decision to change, then it's, well, got to play golf tomorrow. Got to take Katie to the dentist appointment. And there's a ton of things. Well, what is next week look for you? And it's only Monday. Oh, well, it's up to you. I have time. Okay, well, let me call you back. Or then it's always something that gets in the way of making that decision when that person hasn't put that as a high value or high priority in their lives. But the person who's ready, had a guy yesterday came and started working with me. He's having some things going on with his liver. His father died at the age of 40 from some type of liver problem. So his numbers were getting a little high in his enzymes. And he was like, I got to do something. My doctor said, you need to do something. And losing some weight and reducing your cholesterol will help you to maybe or possibly avoid a negative consequence. So he's like, I'm ready to go, 5 days a week if necessary. You tell me, and that's what we can do. Plus, on top of that, he was a former athlete in college, and he just recently gained, he said, about 40 or 50 pounds. But you can tell from his decision, and his eagerness to get involved and how much of a value it is to him. Then, I'm busy and things of that nature, because actually we're all busy. And with millions of things, we can all come up with a million excuses of why we can't do it. But again, it's like you said, those values, and how high of a value is it to you?
And if they're constantly putting the exercise off to the side to do these other things, then I will challenge the person and say, is this really important to you? If it's not that important to you and these other things are more important, then let it go as a goal. And, don't sweat it. Literally, they're not going to sweat at that point. They'd rather, spend time with their family or going to their kids' ball games or whatever. And if that's things that are more important to you, then be okay with it. Don't set yourself up by saying, well, I need to do this too, if it's not as important. You're not willing to carve out that time.
Absolutely. Something I want to also mention that you brought out that was key is making, in any choice that you do make, there's a gain and there is a loss of something. So it's almost like a replacement type of theory, so to speak. The person gives up every night of beer for maybe drinking more water. I mean, and so if the person doesn't replace it with something and gives up the beer, eventually, if they don't put anything else in there, they'll go back to that which they're more comfortable in doing. Or the chips or the cake or whatever the case may be. And you see that a lot because it's like, okay, I'm going to stop doing X, Y, and Z, but what are you going to start doing? I'm just going to stop doing that. What replaces that? So that was good. I like that as well.
Well, one of the things, too, is that in the earlier parts of an exercise program when you're starting, is people kind of fall into the trappings of all or none thinking, too. That,
absolutely.
Oh, I've been working out really well for the past week, and then all of a sudden a couple of days go by and they haven't exercised. And they start telling themselves, gosh, I failed. I haven't done what I've said I was going to do. Right. And so they then think, well, I might as well give up because I haven't met my goal. I haven't followed through with my commitment that I told Kevin I was going to do here.
Absolutely.
And so they just give up. Rather than seeing, what they're doing is they're looking at exercise as either I'm doing it or I'm not doing it. Right. Rather than seeing it on the continuum where, at one end of the continuum, you're not exercising at all. And at the other end, you're exercising every day. For most people, they're going to be somewhere in the middle there.
Right.
And just accept it that, I didn't exercise this day, but I'll go out and exercise tomorrow. And not see it as a setback, but just, I got off, my program there.
Absolutely. One of the things that, and I'll ask you as well, in determining those values and how important exercise is to the individual, I think sometimes, even if the doctor tells them, sometimes it still doesn't register because the guy could be in his early 30s or late 20s. He knows this is something that he needs to do. I want to lose weight, but how do I go ahead and make that decision to do it? I mean, I got all these other things going on, but what do I do to go ahead and push me on over the edge? It's valuable, yes, but these other things I have going on, and it's almost as if the person can't break from their schedule. In their mind, they think that they can't fit it in. It doesn't fit, or whatever the case may be. Or the working mother who has a child, who her days are packed, from doing things at school, or if she's a teacher or at work, and then gets home and has to deal with her child. The question is, well, when do I fit it in? How can I do that? What are some of the things that you would tell that individual? How would you help that person to, especially if they say it's important to them, to maybe fit it in?
Yeah. One of the things is, how do you create the personal investment in it? There's been some really good studies that show that people who participate in exercise, either because of physical fitness reasons or for health-related reasons, are going to be much more motivated to stay with it, stay connected to it. Compare those to people who it's more for physical attractiveness kind of reasons or body image kind of concerns. Right. They're not as going to be committed to the exercise.
Right.
Another hurdle is sometimes, you're using the working mother as an example. A lot of times people feel guilty if they actually were to take time for themselves.
Absolutely.
And so, if they're thinking, well, gosh, I'm taking time for my family. I should be there cooking dinner this evening rather than spending time at the gym. Well, let the husband cook dinner.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely okay to do that. And so looking at, what is it that you're telling yourself? How can you create that kind of investment in it where you take ownership of it, where it's not somebody else telling you what to do? That if your husband or partner or whoever is telling you, oh, you ought to do it, it's only going to go so far. But at some point, you need to recognize, if I'm going to do this, it's going to be for me, and recognize it's okay to do stuff for myself at times.
Right. And that's so very important. I like to tell people when they say, well, I'm busy and I have to work. And you hear that, like, I have to work, I got to do this for work and different things. Well, if you don't take care of your own physical body and your own health, then sooner or later you won't be able to do the work. So you won't be able to do the work, or I'm taking care of my father, or I'm taking care of somebody else or my kids, but they need you. They need you at your best. They need a healthy you to be able to do those things, a happy you. You know, if you're healthier, you're going to be happier. You're going to be able to take better care of them and be joyous when you're around them as well. Mm-hmm. So it's like you say, it's almost taking the ownership and back to me. And it's okay to invest in me so that I can do for others.
Yeah, be a more effective